Welcome to The Journey, Hopkinton Center for the Arts web series, where we meet gifted artists and learn about their paths through their life and through their art. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Amanda Clayton. She's a wonderful actor. You know her from her performance as Cathy Ryan on Showtime City on a Hill. She is a New England native, born and raised in Johnston, Rhode Island, right down the road. She studied at University of Rhode Island and later moved to New York City to attend New York Conservatory for Dramatic Arts. And a year later, in 2006, she made her film debut in a supporting role in an independent film called December Ends. In 2012, Amanda landed the role of Sarah Carter in the Disney adventure film John Carter, a film that also featured actors including Taylor Kitsch, Bryan Cranston, Jon Favreau, David Schwimmer. Amanda later appeared in guest starring roles on The Mentalist and Rizzoli Isles, and in 2014 she was cast as one of the leads in the Oprah Winfrey Network primetime soap opera If Loving You Is Wrong. I love that title. And the momentum continued from there, and she appeared opposite Miles Teller and Katie Segal in the biographical drama Bleed for This about boxer Vinny Pazienza. And in 2016, it was another banner year for Amanda. She starred in two feature films. One was a comedy called The Bet, and the other was a tense and gritty drama that I've spoken about on this show called Bad Frank, opposite her husband, the great actor and filmmaker Kevin Interdonato. Another of my friends. Amanda's star continues to rise, and in 2017 she was cast in the leading role in a Lifetime movie called Cradle Swapping, and the following year in Mommy's Little Angel. We met 2 years ago on the set of City on a Hill, and if you haven't seen her performance, you're missing one of the most nuanced and authentic performances I've ever seen. Amanda's Cathy Ryan is tough, maternal, loving, loyal, fiercely protective, and above all, true to her time and place. She's a must-see artist, and you've just got to check her out. Amanda, welcome to The Journey.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful memory lane trip.
Well, good. I'm glad. It's exciting to see the trajectory you've been on. Yeah.
My God. Yeah. It's crazy.
I know. So much has been happening, and your growing family. Congratulations on the addition to your family this year.
Thank you.
It's so wonderful. I've enjoyed seeing your posts on social media of her. What a blessing she is. So sweet. And having already talked to your husband, Kevin Interdonato, I know how much fun you guys are having with her.
We are. It's been great. It's been weird being locked down with her, but she's 10 months today. And I think we're doing okay.
Yeah. You're doing great. I'm sure.
We're doing good so far.
The vast majority, so 80% of that, almost 80% of that has been in a complete lockdown.
It was wild. I had her in December. We started back up for season 2 of City on a Hill in February. So she was like 2 months old when we went back to work. And then the lockdown happened in March. And literally like days later, she was 3 months old. And it was the time, that 3 month period, that 3 month old moment is kind of when you're like, oh, let's get out. Like, okay, we got our groove down. You can kind of handle yourself now. Like, I think we can go to a restaurant or like, go out, do things. It was March. It was getting warmer out. Nope. Staying home. And so we've just kind of we've gotten out a little bit more now that things have sort of lightened up. But yeah, it's been a wild 10 months of just like home with a baby, which is also really, really amazing to have all this nice, special bonding time.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I was planning to sort of maybe get into this a little bit later on too, but I mean, since we've touched on it, how cool is it that this enforced leisure time, as my father used to call it, and to really you're there. You know how the jobs will come, and I know at least for me, I take them when they come if they're good quality things, and you need to work. I presume you're the same way, and but at the same time, as long as we're in this situation, this is sort of the perfect time to really do that bonding and have that 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 special time.
Well, we have the luxury. She's only a baby, so we didn't have to worry about the school stuff and like the keeping a toddler entertained or a 5-year-old or anything like that, which we're really lucky. But then we're also really lucky because as actors, we're just sort of built for this sort of lifestyle, not necessarily not being able to go anywhere, but to just have all this downtime and try to fill it up as best as you can. I got really lucky because I had a baby to fill it all up this time around. I didn't have to search for anything else to do. Kevin, my husband, wrote like 3 scripts and he's like working on producing 2 movies and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I kept a baby alive. That's what I'm up
Yeah.
to right now. That was my activity during the lockdown right now.
Yeah, that's several full-time jobs. Yeah,
Yes.
I absolutely, absolutely. Well, it is. It's the best and the worst of times, right? The old
Yes.
paraphrase of an amazing line. Here just to just say we have a small invited audience. There'll be some questions later on too, and I'll have
Oh,
a few
cool.
for you as well. But on the show,
Great.
just to remind the folks who are logging on for this web series, we focus on the artist's path and where they come from, where they are now, and where thay're heading. And so I'm hoping to sort of uh, hear about some of your past and sort of where you come from and sort of bring it up to today. But bit by bit,
Yeah.
I've had the good fortune to get to know you and Kevin over the past couple of years, and I guess maybe 2.5 years ago I think I met Kevin at an event outside of
Yeah.
Boston with Jimmy Cummings, producer and actor Jimmy Cummings,
Yeah.
and we all just really hit it off there. And you're both so down to earth, and like Cathy Ryan, you're so authentic and tuned into people, and that's my take on you, Amanda. That you're really someone who is one of my acting teachers used to say, Paul Walker. He used to say, folksy people. You're a folksy person. That you're not just a people person. That's a different thing, but someone
Right.
who cares about people and is empathetic and understands them and knows how to treat them. Where does that come from for you?
My mom's a teacher, so I think that's a lot of it. She was an elementary school and later high school phys ed teacher. So she's very much, just that connected, very open, loving, um, just very real, down to earth person. My mom's a teacher. My dad's a truck driver. That's my background. And they coached all of our sports, and they were just so involved in everything we did. I had a really, really grounded family that I came from in general. This whole lifestyle was never anything we thought about growing up. For them, they were like, "Wait, what?" But yeah, I think it's a lot to do with a New England upbringing a little bit. I think, family is kind of the root core of everything. And we had a really big, sports community that we were always involved in. And I think that's where just being genuinely connected to the people around you, and just we always had like friends that were like family, I think was a really big part of my childhood. Those like the friends of your parents, did you call an aunt or an uncle and all that thing? Like I had so many of those. And it just kind of created this very sort of bonded existence with the people that, once you're connected to somebody, it's kind of like forever kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that.
You're in.
So, yeah, awesome. And you're in, believe me. So sports, I knew you were an athlete. So if you can talk about what sports you were involved with.
Mostly softball.
Softball.
I played softball like my whole life, really, from the time I was like 5, 6 years old. And I was planning to go to URI to play softball for URI.
Wow.
I really had ambitions. They weren't like looking at me or anything. I just wanted to go. I really wanted to play for their team.
Mm-hmm.
And as I moved into college and realized how much time commitment, playing on a college team was going to be, and traveling and all that stuff. And then as I was going towards a theater major at the same time and realizing that level of commitment for rehearsals and shows and just class and all those extra things, there was no option. It had to be one or the other. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was probably a junior or senior in high school, and we went to see, I forget the year of the Olympics. It was the Summer Olympic, the women's softball team that had played in the Olympics. And it was like this huge thing when I was in high school, and they were amazing. And we had gone to see them play at a small field in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I really realized that all these women, this was nothing like the MLB. This was nothing like a career for them. Their shortstop was a doctor, like a physical therapy doctor in real life. And like all these other things had to happen. And I was like, that's not going to be a career. that's going to be a pastime. And I love it. And it's everything to me. I grew up on a baseball field, my entire family. And we had no drama program in high school. We had nothing at all, but I knew that acting was what I wanted to do. And so I just that's when the switch flipped, and I just decided to go for the theater major and go for a career rather than just a hobby and a pastime with a career on the side.
Yeah.
And I just dove straight in college was my first real experience really focusing and studying and doing any sort of drama or theater, anything.
I had heard an interview of yours with Maddie Del Negro.
Another friend of ours.
Another great guy, a really great castmate in City on a Hill. And you had spoken about your first foray into acting and performance. And I just thought it was really fascinating, the context of that performance. Would you mind describing that for the folks who are tuning in?
In my first one, which one was I talking about?
High school?
In high school. My very first, yes. Okay. So technically it wasn't even a show or anything like that. It was we were given the option to, for our midterm exam or final exam in my English class, we were given the option to either write something or a song, a poem, an essay, a play, write something or perform something or do something that had was intertwined within the stuff that we had studied that year. And one of the pieces that we had studied was St. Joan. Mm-hmm. And so I took a monologue from St. Joan and I said, I'm going to go and do this monologue. And I had no business doing a monologue. I was I was a cheerleader and stuff like that. I wasn't this painfully shy person, but I was not the girl who was just whatever and get up in front of everybody. Not at all. And I just decided that this is what I was going to do. And it was a 2-minute monologue. It was so long. And I memorized it very quickly. And I decided this was going to be my midterm. And when it came time for me to do my midterm, it was okay, Amanda, what do you have for us? And I had already cleared it somehow, but I remember I was okay, we all have to go down to the auditorium. So I got my entire class to get up, go down to the auditorium, sit down in front of me. And I even dressed in all white. I changed and got out. I wasn't just in jeans and a t-shirt. I was in white pants and a white shirt and pretended to be bound and all this stuff because it's after she's taken prisoner. And yeah. I did this monologue in front of everyone and everybody clapped at the end of it, which was, I just thought everybody was going to think I was super weird and whatever. And I ended up, I think she asked us to grade ourselves and I gave myself a lower grade that I think I gave myself a 90 or something, or an 85. And I remember being because this was easy for me, but it really wasn't. So I don't know why I did that to myself, but that was the very first time I ever did anything in front of anyone. And it went well and it was received, and people actually came out to me later and were that was really cool. That was really good. I believed you. And I was all right, this might be something I want to do. And I went to URI undecided technically. But when I got there, I couldn't find on orientation day, I couldn't find the undecided person to go follow to sign up for those classes. And the theater sign was right there blaring at me. And I was I'm just going to go with them.
Amazing.
And that was that.
That was it. So, talk about swinging for the fences, that first time at the plate, and doing this thing in front of class. The courage it must have taken to get up and do that is something that you're not known for, no experience in doing. And there was obviously people responded to it, and the applause was one thing, but something inside of you gave you that impulse, number one, the courage. If you think back, do you recognize any other impulses, artistic or otherwise, sort of for entertaining, storytelling, or photography even back, before that?
I do. And my mom, I don't maybe really remember that. I remember the feeling. I don't remember the moment. But my mom told me before that I was 3 And I told her one day that I wanted to live inside of the television. And that made no sense to her. But I know I meant like, I want to be an actor. I want to be a person was watching a children's show, and I remember it was like puppets or something and interacting, and one lost something really important and she was very sad. And then by the end of the episode, they found that thing that was very important and she got so happy. And I very vividly remember watching that episode and feeling so happy that I wanted to cry, and not understanding that emotion, but feeling like really cool and being like, wow, this is really special. And they told me this story, like it was the understanding of like what I was watching made me feel that way. The people and the puppets that I was watching made me feel this way. And that I wanted to do that for people. I wanted to be a part of that was making people feel this really wonderful feeling. And I knew that I wanted to do that in some way. And I would always write stories when I was younger. And there was always this like young authors thing that we had in elementary school. And I always would write stories and try to illustrate them and stuff like that. And my mom put me in dance class and little things here and there to just try to be like, okay, get it out of your system kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, well.
And I would sort of perform in front of my family and stuff. I would get up and like sing a song or whatever, but never in front of like my whole, junior, senior class, whatever it was, where you can be mercilessly ridiculed. But I just decided, like, if I'm going to go for this, I have to do it. And this is what I want. And this is what I connect to. And if I'm going to do this midterm, I'm going to do a monologue.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I don't even know if I knew what a monologue was. Like, I don't even know if it was really like, I have no idea. I have no idea why in the world I ever would have done this to myself, looking back on it. But I do remember feeling really strongly about it and being really connected to the story and the piece. And if I had ever gotten a chance to play Joan of Arc, that would have been like dream role. I'm past that point now. She was like 16, but
let the writers worry about that. You can figure that out. It's interesting that acting gene. I find so many people who do what we do. Whether or not the acting gene expresses itself when we're in college, high school, or sometimes after that for people.
Yeah.
But usually, I think there's something starting to gnaw on them, a feeling. Like you in describing the story about your earliest impulse, you remember the feeling of wanting to be inside the TV too. And if I had my way at 2, 3 years old, 4 years old, I probably would have bumped into you in the same TV because
in the TV.
That's exactly the image that I have. I want to do that. I want to be in there. I want to play,
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you've had that, you never know where that can lead you. So that's a warning and encouragement for
right, exactly. You've been bitten and treat it properly.
You are infected. Poor choice of words these days, I realize. So in terms of your neighborhood, were there people or who inspired you? Were there any artists in your family or in your neighborhood or background?
No.
Wow.
Not really. No. My grandmother was a singer growing up. Mm-hmm. She's had a really beautiful voice. She still has a really beautiful voice.
Wow.
And she's 87 years old and still has just the most beautiful, wonderful voice. And she got married very young to my grandfather. And at around the same time she was getting married, in a very different time. We're talking like, 1950 or so. She had gotten an offer to sing at the time, like a lounge or a nightclub. Mm-hmm. And she really wanted to do it. And my grandfather sort of forbade it. He was like, no, my wife is not going to sing in a nightclub. Like that's not happening. And she just was like, oh, well, okay, you won't like that. So I'm not going to do it. And she never pursued it, but she was, she always sang to us growing up. She taught us songs, all this stuff. And that became a story we heard later on when we were, sort of teenagers. And maybe that part stuck with me too, of like, somebody told her no. and she kind of let something slip away from her. And I, maybe somewhere deep in my subconscious, I was like, nobody's telling me no. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody was really, a lot of like teachers and my grandmother was a secretary and my dad was a truck driver. There was no real, like, big artistic influence in my life. We were a very like athletic family, and that was what we did.
But something in the tree was there, though. I think storytellers singers are storytellers too. These little
Yeah.
2-3 minute vignettes as well. So there's something I believe was there for you. Maybe it wasn't overt, but sounds like you come by it naturally.
Yeah.
I was impressed with a conversation that we had. It was in a very loud room, and I wanted to go down that rabbit hole with you at one point. But it was Chuck McLean, who was a creative city on a hill, and Mark
Any
O'Brien.
room is loud if Chuck McLean's in it. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. And Mark O'Brien too. So a bunch of Aldous Hodge. We were all at an event, and we were talking. And you would describe a conversation with Chuck about seeing sort of Lady Macbeth in this in your character Cathy Ryan, and I just realized, you really do have roots in theater. And just, how did that sort of come about for you? Was it URI or through other training through New York?
No, it was actually that same English course. I had this wonderful English teacher, and I was in a advanced, college prep, whatever it's called, English class. And so we were studying a lot of classic literature and Shakespeare and everything, like all in the same year. It kind of moved through a bunch of different years of different literature. And studying Shakespeare was very difficult for me. I didn't connect to it. I didn't understand it. And my mom, actually, who was a teacher at the time, was talking with, I think, the English teacher at her school, and just sharing, like, her concerns with, I wasn't doing well in the class. I wasn't failing, but I just wasn't doing well because we were doing this whole unit on Shakespeare and I just didn't get it. And my mother went to this teacher and just kind of in passing had mentioned something about being worried about my grades. And the teacher said, well, the library has these really old, they're from like the 70s, but they're filmed performances. So they act out, it's a play essentially, but it's not on a stage or anything. It's just sort of in a black box setting. Everybody's in costume, but the set is very, very, very simplistic, and boxes and things like that. And she said, you should try that. Maybe seeing it on its feet. And because you're also not just reading this literature, you're reading a play for the first time. And it's a strange thing to hand somebody a script that's never read a script before. And she said, maybe seeing it on its feet will help her understand it. And it was The Merchant of Venice. And she brought it home for me. And she was like, look, you're studying Merchant of Venice. I know you're having a tough time. I was trying to do like Cliff's Notes and all this stuff, but all these characters and who's saying what and what they're saying. And I finished watching that play. And I got up and I ran into the kitchen and I was like, Mom, I get it. I was like, I don't know what they were saying, but I understand everything that just happened, because seeing it for real and seeing these interactions and seeing emotions behind these words, even though the words don't totally make sense in this Elizabethan, sort of dialect and verbiage and phrases, just seeing these people interacting was so real and human that I understood it. And all of a sudden I scored like almost perfect on my next on the test on Merchant of Venice. And I think for the rest of I think I had like 2 more plays to do in that thing. And I watched the other 2, and it changed everything for me and then I became obsessed.
It's great. It's for so many people, it's not a great read, but it was never really meant to be read. It was meant to be read by the actors and
seen, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So for people watching who just don't think they don't like Shakespeare, just you owe it to yourselves to check it out on stage, and it can change your life too, for sure.
For sure.
Was classical theater part of your training? Cool.
A very small part. I was at URI for 2 years, and we did we did the Three Sisters, and we did, I think there was a Shakespeare play in there that I didn't necessarily, I wasn't in the Shakespeare play. I forget, was it Much Ado About Nothing? But there was a couple different shows that were done the 2 years that I was there. We did The Crucible. So there was an element of, very original sort of classic theater, classic plays that were a part of what I studied. I wouldn't say it was like my focus, but it was definitely a piece of it, in university. And I loved it. I loved being able to, dive into these things. And I remember taking a script analysis course and really like picking apart things. And that was part of my favorite piece of studying all that literature was script analysis and understanding the dynamics and where you're going in different acts and why it's important what somebody else says about you, not just what you're saying, and all these different things. And I just I loved it. I soak up so much of the writing that comes my way, which is why City on a Hill just was such an exciting thing, because Cathy doesn't say a whole lot, but there's so much there with everything she's doing. And to dive into it. And like you had mentioned, Chuck had mentioned the Lady Macbeth sort of connection. Right. And I just, as soon as he said it, I was like, stop, don't say anything else. I'm done. Okay, this is perfect. And I knew exactly where I was going to go with it. And just, it was like instantaneous. Mm-hmm. I immediately knew who she was. I immediately knew how to dive into this character. So it was great to have that sort of background to know this sort of classic stuff, to have these comparisons and be able to pull from, not necessarily directly from her character. It's a very different thing, but to know the vibe that we're going for in this situation.
It's one of those things that I talk a lot about in classes. I teach at Boston College and at Hopkinton Center for the Arts and the Actors Studio, and I coach privately. And I do talk frequently about the need to love our characters, to have the ability to fight for them, to take their battles on as if they were our own, enough so that they feel like our own battle. And to do that without apology or pulling punches. That's what I've seen you do in episode after episode of City on a Hill, and little snippets of other things I've seen you on the air with, in my little research for you. I don't think there's anyone who does that better than you, that you have this empathy, truly, in this insight into psychology in a way that a real emotional connection. And it just reminds me of our interactions. We would be in two different camps really for City on a Hill. There were what I term as the good guys, the police, right. At the time. Things are changing. But I played a cop who was trying to figure out who did this crime, and you were very much on the other side of that story, on the other end of the spectrum, and we would sort of rib each other. Our worlds are separated for the whole series, and at some point the worlds collide, and create some sparks there too. But the good-natured ribbing going back and forth, I realized, you really do sort of, you have your agenda. You sort of you lock in on the desires, the hopes and dreams of your characters, and it's really fun to see.
Yeah, it's important. I had a teacher when I was in New York, who, along those same lines, she was explaining how it's very important in the same respect to understand that you personally do not have to like or support the things that your character does. There's this funny thing that we can try to do and try to make our characters sort of likable because we want to be liked. Mm-hmm. And it's more like not being afraid to go to that place where you're willing to understand this kind of shitty person. And even in no story does the bad guy think they're the bad guy. Ever. The bad guy very, very, very rarely is just pure evil. It's not. They have a very specific desire. They have a very specific vision. They think they are doing what is right by, whether it's for themselves, their family, their country, whatever it is. It's a very driven, in his story, Hitler wasn't the bad guy. He was doing what he thought was right.
In his mind, yeah.
In his mind, no one else's.
Yeah.
But when you play a role that's like that, anywhere close to anything like that, you have to be willing to go to that place where you agree and you fight for, where did he see that this was right? Where does Cathy see that it's fine that my husband robs banks? Okay, 2 guys got killed, no big deal. Like, moving on. Where does a mother of 3 kids have the audacity to just turn a blind eye? But when you understand that this is a lifestyle, and this is all they know. This was her entire upbringing. And to her, the police or everybody else, it's the bank's money. We're not stealing from a person. We're just stealing from the bank. So it doesn't affect other people in that way. They have insurance for this, all these things. And you start to find your way with, we all make excuses for our behaviors, whether it's breaking your diet and eating, that naughty thing that you shouldn't eat. You're like, well, I deserve it. Well, it's because you have to find that same thing of why your character is doing these like really horrendous things, and not be afraid of it, not be afraid to be unliked, and not be trying to push an agenda against what your character is genuinely feeling is the right thing. And when you're playing the actual villain, that makes your villain character that much more interesting, because you're not just going, whoa, and it's not just mean. It's
twirling the mustache.
It's a very genuine, really awful thing that's coming out. But it's like, well, what? What do you mean it's wrong? It's not wrong. You're wrong. And it's the audience's perspective to decide what they feel about your character. It's not yours as the actor. And it's a really fun little thing to be able to like play around with and then step away from at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the particular genius of Chuck McLean, who was a creator of City on a Hill, and Tom Fontana, who was a showrunner, Jorge Zamacona, Michelle McPhee. They wrote. They didn't write good guys or bad guys. They wrote human beings, and that we could just sort of trust that they had their flaws, but they were going to be rounded out so that people could judge for themselves, and it wasn't up to us to campaign for the white hat or the black hat.
Exactly. And it's up to us to, as the audience, to go, oh, am I rooting for the bad guy? Like, wait, what? Wait a minute. And it's sort of, crisis of conscience of like, am I, I feel for them, but they're drug dealers and they're robbing people and then you're looking at
Kevin Bacon. I mean,
looking at Kevin Bacon's character going like, you're an asshole, and what are we doing here? You're supposed to be the good guy. What's happening? And to me, that's a great show. To me, that's a great film, a great show. Anything that makes you a great play, anything that makes you sort of question your own moral compass. You're like, hold up. But I love it, and it's created a sort of a rhetoric of who is really, do we understand? Did that guy robbing the grocery store? Oh, he was just getting diapers for his baby because he can't afford them. Oh, is he the bad guy now, or is now the system which keeps him from affording diapers for his child the bad guy? Like, which one is it? Yeah. And it's an interesting dynamic, and I love being a part of something that gets to play with that. It's really cool. I mean,
it's been great to be involved as well, and I'm hoping the show has a long life to it too, because I think it's a really good platform for what has been going on in the world for a long time, but really I hope coming to a head now, and things that we are forced to deal with that will happen. You've worked with some real heavy hitters, Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, Chuck McLean, Tom Fontana, Jennifer Todd, some incredible people in the industry. any mentors or people that, that have been out there that you think of first in your life that you learned from?
Being a part of the show with Tyler was probably one of the biggest. It changed my entire life. I mean, it was my first series regular role, and obviously that changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But just Tyler as a person, and Tyler, when you work with Tyler, he is the writer, director, producer. People used to ask me all the time, like, "Oh, well, do you ever see him on set?" And I'd be like, literally all the time, every day. He is the director, he is the producer, he is the editor, he's the everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very close relationship and a very one-on-one, dynamic right from the get-go. And whenever I had the opportunity, I would go to Video Village where, he's sort of set up to look at the monitors while they're filming something. And I would sneak down to set a little bit before I had to be down there to go and watch somebody else filming, and to just stand near him in Video Village, just kind of creep up and like fly on the wall. And he would always see me, and he would hand me, headphones, and so I could hear stuff, or, make sure I could get in there to see the monitors. And I would just sit there and listen to him and try to watch how his brain was working, controlling this whole insane monster that we were filming so quickly. Mm-hmm. And it was that alone was, and just not even having that experience alone, but where Tyler came from, and his whole thing came literally from nothing, and wrote a play, started it, did the Medea thing, and it just sort of picked up, and he just ran with it. And now he has Tyler Perry Studios in the middle of Atlanta, Georgia. And I got to just sort of graze across that incredibleness and try to absorb as much as I could, working with him for 6 years. And just no one has ever put so much in perspective and opened my mind to this industry and to the craft of what we're doing so much, and the importance of it too. And so he's just forever and ever. It's like, I think often, like, what would Tyler do?
Yeah. What is it when you think about that experience? I mean, the stories of Legion about the pace that, which he just cranks through the episodes of things, and he has his system and his way, and the quality is great, but the challenge is, what is the biggest thing you learned from that experience?
That there's a giant difference between you, and you really have to be technically savvy, I think. You can't just be talented. And I don't mean that like I'm amazing. That's just to be talented, and just to be able to sort of memorize, deliver your lines, and do your thing. You kind of need to know what you're doing between different mediums. It's a very different thing to be on stage. It's a very different thing to be on a television series. It's a different thing to be on a soap opera or very fast moving television series. And it's a very different thing to be on a film set. And you need to know those differences, and you need to know how to adapt depending on what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And having theater training is sort of the core of what I was doing at URI, and then knowing how to pull from that training to go on camera, but do a totally different thing. Tyler hires a lot of people who have theater backgrounds, because he works basically like you're doing a dress rehearsal, mm-hmm. a full dress rehearsal, and you get to set and you have to be ready to go. You get one take, mm-hmm. maybe two, yeah. But usually it's one shot, one kill. So you have to be there. If you have a crying scene, if you have to have a moment, you got to be ready to have it immediately. There's no like warm up, wide shot, then punch in, all this. Nope, it goes.
He knows what he wants ahead of time, yeah.
But then after my first season of doing that and getting in that mode and just doing it day after day after day and doing like 35 to 40 pages of dialogue a day, I go to another show to do a guest star role, and just wasn't and it was I was being interrogated, and I had to get all upset and cry and freak out. And it was a scene with like 5 people in it. And I sort of went there on the very first shot, which is just the wide shot. It's just the one to look at everybody. It's not close up on my face, watching me cry and do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized we cut on the shot and I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? Because you can't get that first thing back. You know, you have to sort of rewind and let it build up in another medium and let it get to your moment to have your moment.
Mm-hmm.
And film is a totally different thing. And because the timeline bounces around so much and there's just so many different technical aspects to so many different shows and films and plays.
Short films, which you've done a handful of as well.
Yeah.
Just the pace of those. Yeah.
The pacing, just keeping yourself, it's like, am I sprinting or running a marathon? I got to know, because you breathe different, you move different, and you have to be on your toes for whatever's coming, but you have to know what's coming ahead of time. And then you have to pretend like you don't know what's coming at the same time.
Right.
And I think it was like, I like to say that working with Tyler and doing the show that moved so quickly. We did an episode and a half a day at one point. Wow. City on a Hill, for instance, we're doing an episode over the course of about 10 days.
10 days, yeah.
We're doing an episode and a half in a day of a 1 hour drama.
Yeah.
And it was like actor boot camp. It really was. But then to leave that and go to something else, you have to readjust and adapt to be ready to do it a different way now.
Yeah, pace is everything. I always say to people who ask about it, what's the big thing? Well, number one, you got to know the shot, but also depending on the pace of this thing, you've got to really know what's coming. You've got to really know what that shot list is about, and if you can, people can share it with you. But look at the schedule ahead of time and know sort of what you're going to be asked to do.
And don't just look at what you're doing. Look at what else is going on in the bigger picture.
Yeah. And then inevitably they will switch it up when they have to too. So you got to be ready for it all. No big deal, right?
No downtime is really downtime. You're literally just sitting there going, okay, when is it coming?
Yeah. I've never been bored in my trailer because I know that freight train is coming at some point.
Yeah.
Like most great actors that I've spoken with, I'm sure you know different than this. We pay our dues. I'm sure you have as well. In talking to Kevin, Interdonato, your husband, about this. We all pay our dues. What's that been like for you? Can you talk about some of the sacrifices that you've made to become a working actor?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Rhode Island where we have a wonderful repertory theater and we have, good schools as far as theater studies go, but it's not a hub for really making a true career. And neither is really Boston to make a real, to end up on a Showtime series, let's say, to really make it from there. And so when I was 19, I moved to New York and went to a conservatory school there. I decided to stop going to college to go to a conservatory school because I really wanted to focus on what I wanted to do. And I knew this was my career and this was my goal. And I had this path. And in order to really be on it, I have to make these moves. I was the girl that my mom thought I was just going to literally live at home and go to Rhode Island College, which was 10 minutes down the road, not go 45 minutes for a whole 45 minutes away and live at URI. Never mind move to New York. And so I did. I didn't know anybody. I didn't just okay, here we go. And then I stayed there for 7 years, had a really wonderful experience in New York City and made all of my best friends and had a great little run doing a small theater company and a independent film that I had booked while I was there. And it wasn't enough. And everybody was telling me at that time, it was either you're going to be on a soap opera or you're going to be murder victim number 2 on Law and Order or something. That was kind of in that time period, what was really going on in New York City as far as television was concerned for women my age. And sort of really push past those sort of constraints. It was you need to go to LA, you need to go out there and you need to see what's up. And so I left literally everybody and everything I knew and loved and was comfortable around and went 3,000 miles away. I knew no one. I knew nothing. I know, especially now, I knew nothing about the industry at all. but I knew it's what I had to go and do. And I just moved to LA on my own and figured it out. And I think when you put out there what you want and you're really willing to make that sort of sacrifice and just cut ties and just go for it and dive in, people go, wow, that's really interesting. Why are you doing that? And you're sort of forced to explain what you're up to. And once you kind of speak it out loud, what you're doing, people start to go, oh, well, my sister is a set driver, or so-and-so is a casting director. You should go and, oh, here's their number. Here, just go meet them. Oh, so-and-so is doing a workshop. You should go. And, oh, my cousin's an agent. And all these things start to like come out, and they don't all pan out the right way, but you start to slowly gather up these connections and you start to understand what the bigger picture is. And that's kind of what happened for me. And within a year of moving to LA, I was in the right place at the right time, and I booked John Carter. And that was what they Taft-Hartley'd me into the union. And yeah, I wasn't in the union. I had no credits really at all. I had nothing, but I booked this crazy role in this giant Disney film. And it was literally just being right place, right time,
Well,
and
also the right person in the right place at the right time.
and
Right?
the
Right actor.
But if I had never made that jump to just do it and go to LA, if I had been too scared, or if I had gone, well, my friends are all here, it never would have happened. I don't know what would be. I'd probably still be waiting tables, quite honestly, because I was making good money doing that. But that was the biggest, I guess, sacrifice, because that meant I couldn't see my family. There was Christmases I didn't go home. There was weddings I missed, birthdays, forget it. And then to build up my career in my 30s was a difficult time to decide when to start a family. And I just did that this last year. And that was something that was very much it felt like a sacrifice. It felt like I was putting that off for a very long time. And it became a thing that I wondered if it was ever going to really happen. Yeah. But at the same time, I was doing what I loved. And so I never gave up on pursuing my career in this industry.
That's great. The tenacity and the dedication,
it's the only thing that makes anything. It really is. Yeah. You just have to keep pushing. I've almost given up so many times. And the moment that I decided to not was the moment that something clicked and something came through. Always.
That's why, one of the reasons why I had you on, just knowing how hard you've worked to make these great things happen, to make great art. I'm hoping that my students will be logging on to this, and some other people who are logged on now. I have a few questions. I have a bunch more questions for you that I know we're not going to get to, because I know you have others going on. But I do have a few questions. There's one of my own favorite question, and a few I just want to make sure we get to at least a couple of the questions from our little invited audience. My favorite question, and I think I've asked every guest on the show, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started in the business?
That's a loaded question, because like I said a little while ago, I know now that I knew nothing moving to Los Angeles. I just knew this is what I wanted, and I just was going to make it happen come hell or high water. But what I do really wish that I had been, because I had gone through school, and I wish somewhere through school somebody had explained to me a little bit more about how to treat this as a business. Because that was a big turning point for me, was to really understand that I am a business. And now I am technically a corporation. I have a corporation in my name that loans me out to the shows that I do. And that's for, tax purposes and business purposes and all that kind of stuff. And that was something that was it was like I booked a series regular, and it became a thing that everybody started saying, oh, well, you have to open your S Corp now. And I was like, my what? I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know what any of this means. And so looking back, I wish in college at URI or somewhere along the way that I had taken a little more time to understand that part of it and not been so sort of dreamy about, the artistic piece of this. Because if it is really something that you're pursuing to do as a career, it's something that you need to understand how to market a business. You need to understand how to run a business, how to market a business, and how to make yourself a product that people are going to consume in whatever capacity that is. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I just thought in the dumbest way, like, well, like, I'm cute, right? Like, I'm not like that dumb blonde, but there was that element that just was, I had no idea that there was so much more. And there's still so much I don't know. I didn't understand that there was, that people have a value on their head, and why celebrities are A-list and B-list and D-list. That's a real thing that actually has a monetary value attached to it when it comes to salespeople and distributors and networks and all this stuff. And now social media is a big part of it. And there's just such a other huge underbelly of what to do with this lifestyle. And if it's just something that you want to do casually and as a pastime, do some community theater and do a little bit of extra work, or, a one line here or there in a movie that comes to town, that's one thing. And that's great. But I think even with that, there's still a way to sort of be able to understand what's going on around you in a better way, that rather than just like, I'm here to do my lines. And I think that, and I know so many people now that didn't understand that either. And they had huge careers going back 20 years ago, and they have nothing now. Mm-hmm. And it's such a lesson in, just this whirlwind can swoop up. And if you don't know how to maintain a true business mentality through it, and what your next moves are and all that kind of stuff, and to understand the production end of things, I think it's so important. And I wish I had known it sooner, but I'm really glad I know it now, or have a taste of it now.
Right. Well, sage advice, just really from sharing your experience with it too. And so many things that we have to figure out for ourselves, what all this means for each of us. What is our business? What are we offering to the world? And I know we all like to be able to do every role that we're, assigned or granted, or every opportunity we think we can do it. But the fact is we can't. We are cast. We are who we are. The world sees us one way. We may see ourselves another, and we have to adjust our thinking around that too. Those realities, but we figure it out, right? That's really, thank you. I have a few questions here, and I'm actually, so that I can read this like negative 10-point font, I'm going to put my spectacles on. This question one is, what was this is an interesting one, your best source of constructive criticism on your way to becoming an actor? Your best source of constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism. I think that the best one was knowing that I wasn't, how do I put this? I was basically told, like, you're cute, but you're not like the leading lady in a lot of ways. Like, maybe you should lose weight, or you should do this and you should do that, right? Like, this is stuff I was told when I was in college. And I say that it was the best because it lined me up. It, number one, maybe knocked me down a peg of being like, that I'm blonde and I'm blue-eyed, and like, that's just gonna like get me in the door. So many girls are like this. And it made me realize, like, oh yeah, so many girls are like that. And that I'm not special for that. And it made me look further into, well, I don't agree with you. And I'm not like overweight and I'm not this and I'm not that, but I bring something more to the table than just what I look like. And if that's what you're going to judge me on, then I don't want a part of that either. And it kind of made this thicker skin on me that made me take inventory of myself and to really look inside and be like, I don't need to conform to what you visually think I should be, because somebody else could come along 3 seconds later and look more like that. And you'll just be like, oh, never mind, get out of here. And to me, that part of the criticism for a lot of people would be like, oh my God, that was the worst thing to hear. And I think it was a shitty thing to hear, but there was something else in me that made it go like, okay, but I know that I'm still really good. And what makes me really good and what makes me worth somebody's time, and why should I be on that role more than anybody else? And you kind of have to get self-centered in that way. And it kind of forced that. And because everything is apples and oranges when it comes down to a role or to whatever it is. And I could be not blonde enough, or I could have my eyes might be too blue, and I'm 1 inch too short or 1 inch too tall. And it's like, could be one thing to the next, depending on, so it was like, I'm not going to let any of that crap get in my way. And if that's the criticism that somebody wants to bring to me, then I honestly don't care. Because that's not what I'm bringing in the first place. This is just the shell that's around me, and we can chop my hair off, or we can dye it brown, or I'll wear contacts. I don't know what to tell you, but I know what I bring with not just my talent. It's not that either. It's my demeanor. It's my ability to adapt and to strive in certain situations. And I'm not shy when it comes to people in the room and different things that I have a full-blown understanding of exactly who I am. And so receiving that level of criticism was just kind of like.
Nice. Knowing who you are, right?
Yeah. It kind of forced my hand in that way when I was quite impressionable. I think I was only like 19 or 20 years old. So
what a lesson that is. What a lesson to know how important it is, to have that understanding that you need to value that. Who are you? So that you can actually become other people in a sense, and to understand other people, relate through your own experience too.
Right.
That's great. I saw there were a couple of questions that were sort of very similar too, and I've sort of put them together and merged them in a question that I had been thinking of myself, and this will be the last one because I know that you have other things going. So I realize the math here doesn't work, but you're someone who puts 100% into your work, and I know you're someone who puts 100% into your family. And how do you manage to do that? Chelsea also asked a very similar question. So.
You separate your time. It's hard. And this has been the strangest season working, because I went back to work 2 months after having my baby. And so now I'm worried about, what's going on. Did she eat? Should I call home? Whatever. Now I'm on set thinking about all these other things. I've had the luxury of working a lot on location, and that helps immensely because you're not going home to your own home every day, all day. And my husband and I had worked out our very, simple system with one another of, you call me when you wake up, I call you when I go to bed. And we just talk like that every day. If we can extra, that's great. And we don't go 2 weeks without seeing each other. Somebody flies to see the other one. But I got to dive into my work, every single day, the entire time I was gone, for a month at a time. That's all I'm doing. I'm in a hotel and I'm just working on that. And now I'm working in Brooklyn. So I'm literally coming home at the end of every day. And I have a baby now. It's not just my husband. And it's important to have really wonderful people around you. I think you have to, as an actor, you have to be very specific about the world you create for yourself. And yourself has to be, like I said, you have to know exactly who you are and exactly what you bring and exactly what you bring into a relationship too. And in order to function as a wife and a mother and Cathy Ryan and whatever else I'm auditioning for on a certain day at the same time, I have to do a lot of just a lot of soul searching, I think, in general. And then I also have to shut her off very quickly. I have to find my ways to shut off Amanda too. When I get to set, I have to just sort of find, and it was pretty difficult this time around. It was hard to like click my brain back into that mode, but I somehow found it. You know, it's like all those little tricks and things that you kind of think about for a very long time, and suddenly they fall way back here and you don't have to think about them anymore. I just, it's like, close your eyes, take a deep breath, take a walk around. I listen to music a lot. And then it's nice to be able to just sort of get out of the city and come back here to our house, and I can leave her behind, leave Cathy behind, and just be in my relationship. And we have a wonderful collaborative relationship, my husband and I. So it's, you just have to build your own world in a place that you can feel safe and comfortable and really truly be able to shut off your work existence. Sometimes I'm sure you've had that same sort of experience of, coming home with 2 kids and everything else, and you have a pent up scene and a lot going on at work, and you just have to be able to like let it go. And if you can't, that's okay too. You just have to find your way and have people around you in your life that can understand when you say, I need some time. I need a minute. I need to go work on something, or I need to get out of my head with something, or whatever it is. And it's not just me who does anything. We have built a really wonderful life together to be able to support each other, whether it's near or far. And it's really great. I'm just very lucky in that respect.
Well, I think luck comes to people who work hard and deserve it too. I think I always talk about this, and I was talking to my kids about it, how important it is to choose your partners wisely as well, and that's everything. Someone who understands, and that when I have to be away from home, this person is there for the kids, for the family, for me, and then vice versa when we change gears and switch it up too. Amanda, you are a wonderful actor, a talented and dedicated artist, and a great person. I'm honored to have your friendship. I love watching the star rise. Well, thank you. Good things happen, as I say, good things happen to good people, and I look forward to seeing you again soon, on and off screen. You deserve all the success, and just please give a hug to your new little one.
I will.
A big one for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jere. We'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Great. And thanks to all of you for logging onto the journey. See you next time.